All right, welcome back, everyone, to Week 4 Massachusetts Legacy Leagues in the summer of 2026. Some good games to talk about this week. Some close ones, some not so close ones, but that's how it's been going so far this season. Then we'll talk about next week's matchups, which I think are probably the best 4 matchups we could have. So it's going to be a very interesting talk we have later. But first, shout out to our sponsors, Ethos and 110 Grill, of course, and of course Noah and Daniel for joining me this week. We'll just hop right back into the action. We'll start with we'll start with who's next versus Run It Up. And this was an interesting matchup. So it was the summer champions versus the winter champions. Obviously, Run It Up didn't have a chance to play in the winter, so it was fresh, kind of their first time back on the court this season without playing last season. And Who's Next is the most previous champions. But Who's Next took this one 81-63. It was a bit of a blowout in the fourth quarter. I think that's really and the third quarter. So the second half blowout, I think. Run It Up kept it close in the first half, but they had 4 guys and they just got fatigued. And Who's Next just never loses energy. Even if they had 4 guys, I would be confident if Darwin's out there, if Yalo's out there, a lot of those guys just never stop running, and they seem to never get tired, and that's just Who's Next game. And it's not, you don't want 4 guys against Who's Next. But Ajun led the way with 18. Darwin with 16. 4 for 6 from 3, doing what Darwin does. And for Run It Up, Elaine Leonard, 22 points. But other than that, Tack and Sean had a really rough shooting night, going 0 for 7 from 3 and 1 for 10 from 3. Even if they were hitting 5 more of those, they're taking 7 and 10. If they hit 5 of those combined, this game's a lot closer. But yeah, wasn't the best shooting night for them. And I can't really blame them. They're coming off of a last week's game that was kind of just a scrimmage because of a forfeit, and then the week before that they took a loss too. So they've had some couple bad weeks in a row, and they only had 4 guys this week. So rough game for Run It Up, but I don't think this is a really a good show of what they've got. They had no Marcus Collins, who's such a big player for them. Casey Key, who's a great bench player, coming off the bench for them. But yeah, Daniel, I'll hop over to you. This run Who's Next has been on seems like they're almost unbeatable, but what do you have to say about them in this win?
I mean, obviously, run it. Run It Up is a very good team as it is. Obviously, like you said, they won the league last year, and I think that this just proves Who's Next is not some team that's had a cakewalk schedule. They are a real contender here, and possibly someone that can make it maybe to the finals or the quarterfinals. And this just shows us like how much of a team they are. What I mean by that, like you said, Illusion Brown, he only had 18 points, and that was their highest score. They dropped they dropped so many points in this game, and they're doing it as a team. No one person is trying to play hero ball here, and just as a whole, they are trying to win together. And the chemistry is just there when you watch them play. It's like they're playing pickup. That's just like the best way I can describe it. I was glancing over at them when I was on the other court, and I saw them laughing. I saw them having a good time. I saw them joking around with each other, and just this is a team that wants to be there and wants to play together. And it's not one person that's just trying to take the ball and score all the points for them.
Yeah, I saw there was a good clip of them, and I think they passed the ball like 6 times in one possession. And in this league, you don't really see that too much. It's kind of just, pass the ball if you get stopped. Hey, that's really kind of what it seems to be with a lot of these teams. But Who's Next does not care who's taking the shot. It could be the guy who's 0 for 8 of the night or the guy who's 9 for 9. They just need to get a good look, and they don't care who's taking it as long as you get that good look. And they're great at getting offensive rebounds. That's something Darwin does very well. That's something Ajun does very well. So they have like a game plan, and they play basketball how it's meant to be played, and that's what's working for them. Noah, if you want to take a second to talk about Run It Up, since I know you've seen them play before and what what their peak can be, but obviously right now they're just struggling from shooting and they're struggling getting guys there. And are you concerned for them at all? What do you got to say about them?
Yeah, I think this is definitely a concerning game for them. I mean, if you want to be the best, you have to beat the best. That's what everybody says. And an 18-point loss to who's next is very telling of the state of this team. But I think it's also telling of a theme in the league as a whole where the teams that show up player wise are the teams that show up in the box score. You can't have four players show up. You're going to get gassed by the end of the game. That's just how the league works. Um, and Run It Up just didn't get enough production from their top end guys that were getting it done last year. I mean, Tag Gomes is a finals MVP from last year's Summer League. He went 0 for 7 from 3, like you said. Sean Yard, he's won awards too, 1 for 10 from 3. They got outshot 19.2% to 44%. That's not going to win you basketball games, especially when you're outmanned. And they also lost the rebounding game. And so for Run It Up, I think the next direction here is obviously hope that Tat Gomes can piece it together a little bit. He's had some games with high assists, but you got to start making your shots and you got to start coming into the games. You're not going to win games that you don't go to.
Yeah, guys show up for the playoffs sometimes, but you got to play a certain amount of games to even be eligible for the playoffs. So people got to remember that. Yeah, showing up is the number one thing. You can't win a game if you don't show up. Yeah, I think that wraps up that game. We'll go into our next game. We'll talk about us over them versus the squad. Us over them took this one 90-79. Um, for the squad, Musa led the way, 25 points. John Cologne 24, Jay Sean at 22. Very spread out scoring wise. They only had four guys, but they honestly showed a lot of hustle throughout that game. They didn't really show too much fatigue like we saw with running up. I think the squad, they're a lot younger, the guys, and they were running that whole time and they were showing it. For us over them, Isaac Lane 27, Amandi 25, Shaq 23, Anthony 15. Spread out scoring as well from them. But yeah, so this was kind of what we were talking about last week in the hero ball aspect of us over them and how all these guys kind of have been the hero on their teams, but now they don't really have to be. And spreading out the ball like they had this game was very important, especially from a team like the squad who kind of try to keep coming back. It was kind of a 6 point game the whole time, and they tried creeping up again and again, but I think us over them just there was instances where we noticed a comeback, and we were like, all right, we called a timeout or we talked, and we were just like, lock in for a couple plays on defense because the defense is what's been struggling for us, and I think we were able to actually lock in on when it mattered. Anthony Cabrera is one of the best defenders on the team, if not the best defender on the team, and one of the smallest guys out there, and he just shows a lot of heart on defense, and I think he had we had four steals, everyone else had two steals. It was definitely a steal heavy game on defense. We only had one block, so when we're making plays like that, rather than getting blocks, it just shows that everyone's kind of keeping their head up and involved on the defense. And even when we're not in the whole time, I think we know when to lock in and we know when to have fun as well. I know some of our guys were throwing up some ridiculous shots, and Shaq was throwing up 360 layups, but um, yeah, it was definitely a close game, but it didn't feel too much like one. It kind of felt like we were just having fun out there, and when we had to lock in, we locked in. Um, Noah, talk about us over them a little bit. Talk about what it means to have those guys like Isaac and Shaq who can score 30 points a game, but kind of have to dial it back here and there.
Yeah, I mean, we know this team is loaded with talent. We saw they have MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year. As far as the list goes, they've got easily the most talent in the league. And three guys scoring 23 plus points on your team is not something you're going to find essentially anywhere else in the league. Um, but yeah, Shaq Murray really impressed me in this game. I thought his scoring was at a different level than everybody else. He's so crafty around the rim. He's a great shooter as well. And obviously Isaac Lane and Amandi Weaver, there are very few people in the league that can go toe to toe to them when it comes to slashing and getting to the rim. And I would not want to jump with Isaac Lane. I mean, that guy is huge. He's going to dunk on you if you're, under 6 feet and you can't jump out of the gym. And so it helps to have those three really talented players. But I do want to say I was also very impressed by the squad and the fight that they put up. Obviously, we couldn't see the same fight out of them because they only had 4 people. But this team went toe to toe with Run It Up. This team went toe to toe with other great teams. And I didn't see as much fight from them as in prior weeks, but I think part of it was because they only had 4 players. And so you couldn't really have anyone from the bench hyping everyone else up when everybody that is on your team is on the court. So I would like to see a little bit more from them, but I think they're one of the more promising teams in the league. And I think they're kind of like a devolved version of us over them. They want it really badly, but they're still figuring out how to get those big scoring numbers.
Yeah, I think the squad's definitely a team you can't write off coming into the playoffs. I think even if they were a lower seed, you got to be careful of them. They got a lot of guys like John and Musa and Jay Sean who can kind of score when they want, along with Josh Monty, kind of that leader that wasn't there this week, who's definitely a vocal guy that is the guy that you're talking about who hypes up the team on the bench. That's definitely what Josh Monty does. Even when he's on the court, he hypes up his guys. And I think he's just a vocal leader on defense as well, kind of calling out, pick screens, and anything else, double teams. He's there to kind of give his guys a heads up, but he wasn't there this week, and maybe that shows. But scoring wise, a lot of they did very, very well. They shot 65%, but only 9% from three. They didn't really take too many threes, but yeah, it's not going to win you games when you're only shooting 1 for 10, or 11, 1 for 11. Daniel, talk about if you got anything to talk about the squad, go for it. I know we kind of touched on a lot, but I know you had a lot of notes, so I wanted to give you a chance to talk as well.
I was on the sideline for this game. I was filming it. The one thing I noticed about the squad is that they just seemed frustrated. Also, Rhythm's a very good team. Obviously, I'm not trying to suck up to you here, Cade, but definitely they faced a really good team. And if we're gonna talk about trash talking, it felt like they were almost trash talking each other. They were mad. They were mad at the situation, and then it turned into blaming, and that's when things went downhill. I mean, it. I feel like this is not necessarily a problem of skill, it's a problem of chemistry. If you can fix the chemistry piece on this team, I think this team can be really good. This team, I mean, half of these guys are on the squad are averaging over 20 points a game, right? It's a matter of the other guys how they're able to contribute. I also just want to bounce over to also for them for a sec. If you're shooting over 90% from the block or down low, that is just impressive by itself. Amandi Weaver this game was unbelievable, especially around the rim, grabbing as many points down low as he humanly could. Matter it's dunks, layups, and from three he was 50% as well. I mean, definitely going into the playoffs, he's gonna be one of the most valuable assets for them, and I just don't think he gets recognized enough for that.
Yeah, Amadi gets recognized enough for that. Don't worry. He got MVP last season. I know you weren't here, but yeah. So
Oh,
he
okay.
was.
So I wasn't here, but that's what I noticed in the stat sheet this game out of anyone. So I just want to make sure he's getting that notice.
He'd love to hear you say that though, but don't worry. He gets his recognition. We'll go into our last game. That was OTM versus RI Wave. This was a good game for a majority of the time. Honestly, it was really close, and then I think in that third quarter was really when OTM kind of let it go, and honestly, was it? Yeah, it was. I think it was tied at one point between the third and fourth quarter. So it was a very close game. Um, RI Wave ended up on top 69-57, and they pulled away in that fourth quarter by great margin. But scoring wise, it was Rich Hall, and then it was Terrence Gallo for OTM. Rich Hall, what can we say about him? 41 points, honestly, 40 points, but I honestly want to say he didn't play great. He shot 35%, scoring 40 points. He shot 13 for 37. That's a lot of shots that you could have got to, Jared, Joey, Connor's one of the biggest guys in the entire league, if not the biggest guy in the entire league. I want to see him take more than 3 shots down low. Um, Jared's one of the best shooters in the league. Get him the ball. But I know they only had 4 guys, so this was an impressive win from them. For OTM, Terrence shot 9 for 11. Keep getting them the ball. They want to get their scores. I know Terrence doesn't shoot necessarily, but um, yeah, a lot of those guys on the bottom half of OTM though, they've been shooting the ball maybe too much. Not shooting very well. Two 15%ers taking over 10 shots each. It's kind of what's gonna hurt you if you're not having the greatest shooting night at halftime. Maybe come up with a different game plan, take some layups. But yeah, the shooting killed them, and it was tied in between the third and fourth quarter. So um, yeah, I mean shooting from all the teams. This would let's see how many shots each team took. Yeah, RA Wave took 68 shots. OTM took 65. OTM only made 24. RA Wave only made 25. So 3-point difference definitely. 4 for 33 from three for OTM, and 9 for 36 from RA Wave. So this was just a terrible shooting night for both teams. Um, and that's what was the difference maker. I mean, OTM had 44 rebounds compared to RA Wave's 31. So it was definitely a 3-point game that changed this for them. OTM only hitting 4, RA Wave hitting 9 of them. And Rich Hall obviously was a difference maker. No Brian Henson this week. He was injured, so he didn't play this week. Um, yeah, a big game from Rich Hall, but we've seen that it's kind of an average game from Rich Hall, even below average with the shooting wise. Daniel, I'll jump right back to you. Talk about our wave. This was a close game. OTM fought even with a bad shooting night. They fought and they almost came out on top, but they kind of lost in that fourth quarter.
Are we gonna call this a wake up call for RI Wave? Because this was a 3-point game at halftime. I mean, I was shocked at this because RI Wave is such a good team in general, and they nearly had an upset this week from OTM. I mean, Terrence Gallo had, like you said, 20 points, was shooting very well from the block, 81%. I mean, this was really surprising for me. Obviously, Rich Hall did his thing, but along with that, I would have liked to see him, dish the ball a little more, maybe get some more of his teammates involved, which he did in the third and fourth quarter. Maybe not as much in the first half. I mean, obviously they're lucky to come out with the win here, but I feel like this could be a kind of a moment where they have to step back and be like, "Hey, we need to consider the fact that maybe going into the next couple of weeks we need to lock in so we can get that 1 or 2 seed." Because I still believe this is a team that can make a run in the playoffs, but I also really want to see OTM win because this is a team that wants to win so badly. They have the talent. I just think they were dealt a bad hand with their schedule because they've been facing all these top teams, and now that they're heading to the back half of the season, they're in a really tough spot.
Yeah, I think, maybe instead of a wake up call, I think this is an attest to how good Brian Henson is and how good he makes this team. Defensively, he's averaging 2 blocks a game, and I think he's top 5 in assists and rebounds. Or he was obviously before this week where he didn't play. Um, and I think that's just such a game changer for RA Wave. It kind of gives, Rich Hall maybe less pressure to shoot the ball every single possession. And also to be the one passing, be the one distributing the ball as well. Um, yeah, for OTM, I didn't see too much of a change from the previous game, so they're still kind of playing. I mean, whether or not they're playing the top teams, they're gonna have to play how they play, and I think that's kind of how it's been for them. And the shooting just wasn't there, and it hasn't been there all season. Maybe they just got to get up some shots in the off week, or yeah, between weeks. But shooting not great for either team. But I think if Brian Heston's there for RI Wave, I think this is a much bigger blowout. I think he just adds so much defensive. Um, he just adds so much on defense and the offense. I think he distributes the ball very well, and he can also score the ball very well. So Noah, talk about OTM, talk about that shooting night, but talk about how they come away with a win, maybe against a team like Team Missouri.
Yeah, I don't think it's unfair to say that they would come out with a win over Team Missouri. The problem with OTM is they just have it all wrong in terms of their game plan. You got a player that's scoring 20 points on 11 shots, and then you've got another player, I'm not going to say his name obviously, but he's scoring 8 points on 20 shots. I mean, that's completely ridiculous and unacceptable from any player. I think if you're going to win basketball games, you have to be efficient with the basketball. And the problem with a guy like Terrence Gallo who doesn't shoot is that he's looking too much for his teammates. And if his teammates are chucking threes like it's nobody's business, then they're not going to win any games. Like they're not going in. Um, I do think OTM has enough firepower to get past a weaker team like Missouri, but they've got to figure out something with their game plan. And honestly, I was generally unimpressed with both teams in this game. RI Wave had 64 out of 69 of their points come from two guys, and we've already seen that Rich Hall, he's great against OTM. He's going to score 40 points. Then when you play us over them, Anthony Cabrera goes in the game for 5 minutes and locks him up. If you're getting all of your scoring from one or two guys, once you play even a somewhat competent defender that his whole mission is to lock you up, that's going to have an impact on RI Wave because who else do they go to? They could go to Jaron Hansen, but I'm not convinced that he is a productive first option if somebody else gets shut down. But one thing I did like to see was 7 blocks from Connor Harrington. That was very impressive. He was going up with some of the highest flyers in the league. He got a couple blocks on Gallo, which I was impressed of. But overall, just an ugly game in my book. And I would like to see more from both of these teams going forward in terms of their game plan and in terms of how they're approaching winning basketball games.
Definitely, I think that I couldn't say anything any better. Yeah, that kind of wraps up our recap of the week. Um, we'll talk about next week's games. I don't really think. I think the next week's games are so good that they'll replace our Ethos 110 Grill question of the week. I just want to get talking about these games because there's a lot to talk about, and I think they're probably right now currently the best matchup for each team. Um, and we'll talk about which one do we want to talk about first? Let me see. Since we were just talking about OTM, let's talk about OTM versus Team Missouri. That's the matchup we got next week. Battle of the team that hasn't won yet. One team is going to come away with the win, and I honestly, it's really, really close. Yeah, I mean, Daniel, I'll bump it right to you. I don't want to go first with this one because it's hard. So I'm gonna make you do it because I
Neither
can do
neither
that.
do I. Neither do
It's a
I. I'm
tough
so
game.
I'm so torn between both of these teams. I want them both to win so badly. Um, I will take OTM here, and there's a couple reasons behind it. I know they've had a rough couple of weeks, but I think maybe they listen to Noah here. They watch this podcast, and they rethink their game plan. And I think that they prioritize giving Terrence Gallo the ball maybe on fast breaks or more opportunities towards the rim. They open up the 3-point shooting to other guys that could possibly make a difference. And maybe you just don't shoot as many threes. I mean, maybe you attack the rim more. I mean, Marco Wade, Nico Wright, all great players, but they just need to scheme it better. And I think against a team like Missouri, I'm not calling this a testing ground, but I think it's a chance to like kind of take a step back and maybe look at their game plan and change it and see if it does better for them.
All right, Noah. What do you think? Who do you think's coming out on top?
I'm taking Missouri. I like Missouri in this matchup. I think that they have just the right pieces to beat OTM. They're a good rebounding team. They've got consistent rebounding numbers every week. And OTM, as we know, is going to be giving you a lot of chances to get rebounds and push the pace of this game. And so I think if Missouri can capitalize on even 50 or 40% of the transition looks that they get, they're going to run away with this game. They had a bunch of players, playing well in previous weeks. They've just got to have one game where they put it all together. And I think this is a good chance for them to do that. Obviously against a kind of near the bottom of the rankings team like OTM. And I think this is a good chance for some of their guys like Zay Gadsden to show that he's able to, win basketball games, not just put up big scoring numbers, but also turn that into winning basketball. And I think Azuri maybe gets some momentum from this, maybe goes on to even win another game against an opponent not named OTM this season. But yeah, I'm taking Missouri.
So OTM, I think OTM brings kind of a more aggressive defensive game, but I just think Azuri has. From watching them, I know they're a free agent team, but they all have heart, and they honestly seem like they're playing together really well. And I think I'm going to go with Team Missouri. I think Joey Nieberger is going to lead the way for them. I don't think OTM really has anybody to match him in the paint because you know Nico Wright is a great defender in the paint, but I think he's going to have trouble guarding Joey, just because Joey's not a guy who goes up just right away. He kind of messes with the defender a little bit, hesitates, spins, fakes. I think that's just going to give Nico Wright trouble in the paint, maybe lead him to get a lot of fouls early on, then kind of let up on defense. And I just don't think OTM has too many guys that can guard down low like that. And then I think Zay Gadsden, I think, is going to have a good shooting game, and I think that's going to be the difference. I think it's going to be a very close game. I hope OTM shoots better this game just for the sake of the morale on that team. You got to shoot better than what they've been shooting. Um, but yeah, I think I'm going to go with Azuri. I think Joey Niederberger is a great player down low, and I think he's going to kind of show that, and I think he's going to kind of take over. But that being said, I think it's going to be a close one. But yeah, maybe we see Azuri come away with a win. Maybe we see OTM, but either way, somebody's going to come away with this not being 0-4 or 0-5 after this week. So somebody's going to get their first win. It's going to be an exciting game. I feel like that happens every season. Is that the two halfway through the season, two teams that haven't won a game play each other, and it's a great game. It's always a good game. So I'm excited for that one. And I'm also excited for RI Wave versus Who's Next. I think this is kind of, an explosive team, in RI Wave that's kind of made a run since they lost their first week and now are 3-1, and they've played good teams since then. Um, and Who's Next is obviously, we all know what Who's Next is. They're kind of the team to beat right now. But RI Wave has some talent, and Rich Hall is averaging 40. Who's Next has great defenders, but I think Rich is going to be a problem. But I also think if Brian plays, he'll be a problem as well. Because if Yala's got the paint on lockdown, this team has a lot of guys who can spread the paint. And if Brian's on Yala, if they're not running a zone, that brings Yala out of the paint, which means Rich has an easier time at the basket. I think RI Wave have a lot of good pieces to kind of hurt Who's Next, but I think you gotta do a lot more than hurt them, and I think Who's Next kind of just seems unbeatable at this moment, and I think the only kind of two teams that stand a chance with Who's Next is a fully fleshed out run it up, with Marcus, with Casey Key on the bench, with all those guys coming off the bench. I think if Run It Up isn't fatigued, they can make a run and beat Who's Next. And obviously, I'm going to pick us over them. I think we have what it takes in that first game. Just defensively, no one was kind of stepping up and hopping on Ijun or Yala, and we kind of just let that game go. And I think we have what it takes to beat them because we went down 8 early on and we stuck with them for the rest of the game, and we were stuck at that 8 points, but we kind of just let it go really early. And I think we have what it takes to beat them, and I think we play them next week after this week again. So we'll see that really soon. But this week is Who's Next RI Wave, and I'm going with Who's Next, but I think RI Wave is going to keep it very close. It might give Who's Next the toughest fight they've had all season. Noah, I'll go to you. If you got anything different to say, go for it.
I'm sticking with you, Cade. I agree. I think Who's Next is going to come out with this one. I think in this case, Who's Next has so many ways that they can kill you, and RI Wave only has a couple. Obviously, you mentioned Brian Hansen. If he plays, that would be huge for them, but I still don't think it would be enough. Who's Next had, a couple different guys in double digits, 4 or 5 people in double digits. Um, Darwin Pereira's finally finding that shot again, which has been great for him. And I just don't really see. I expect Rich Hall to have a big game considering he's shooting upwards of 35 shots a game, but like I just don't think that that's going to be enough to beat a team with as much depth as who's next, especially if they get a showing like they did this week against Run It Up, where you're getting 7 out of your 8 players coming to this game. If their players can stay dedicated and they can get another big scoring game from Darwin Pereira and another big game from iJune, I just don't really know who's going to beat them in this league. But I think it will be another big game from Rich Hall, but it'll be a comfortable win for who's next.
All right, Daniel. I know RI Wave's your team, so what do you think
I'm
they're gonna
hopping
do
off
this game?
the. I'm gonna hop off the RI Wave train for a week. I think us over. I think who's next is the team to beat. I mean they're like I said before, they played as a team last week, and I feel like for RI Wave, well, Rich Hall is a very good player and probably gonna be the MVP of the league. I think that the rest of the team, even though there were only a couple guys there last week, I mean, just the difference between Rich Hall and our teammates was significant. I mean, the next best scorer to Rich Hall was Jared Hansen, who had 23. I mean, that's an 18-point difference, right? And if they don't play as a team next week and they just give Rich Hall the ball and say, okay, go ahead and shoot it, you're not playing OTM. You're not playing Missouri. You're not playing a less strong team. You're playing a team who hasn't lost the game. If you let Rich Hall shoot upwards of 35 shots, it's not going to be the same because he can't go in, he can't get his rebounds, and I think that might be their downfall. Again, I still think RMA is a very good team when everyone's there to help Rich Hall and help Jared Hansen. But other than that, if it's just going to be the those two running the show, I think they're going to have a tough time against a very strong who's next team.
All right, yeah. Uh, so we got 3 for who's next. So yeah, I mean it's hard to go against who's next with how they've been playing. And yeah, if Brian shows up, it's gonna be a closer game. If he doesn't, I think it's gonna be a very difficult game for RI Wave. Um, we'll go into here's another tough one. The squad versus Team ASAP. So this is a tough one. I think both ASAP and the squad have a lot of guys who can score, like John and Musa for the squad, but on ASAP you got Almar and you got Gian. I know Gian wasn't there this week. Um, and Team ASAP's had some struggles with getting guys there. But if Gian and Almar got some 2 guys to support them, I think they take this one over the squad. I know their record doesn't show it so far this season, but they've had some complications. But the squad, there are a lot of younger guys, and ASAP with Gian and Almar, these are really experienced guys with legacy leagues, and I think they know how to pick apart a defense that might struggle to have somebody who's able to guard Gian or Almar. The squad's got some taller guys, and I just don't know if their shorter guys are going to be able to keep up with Gian and Almar. There's are some great shooters, Gian and Almar, but they also attack the rim very well. And I don't know if the squad has enough on both sides of defense on that aspect, guarding the rim and guarding the perimeter. I think they're going to struggle with that. And I think if the ASAP has a full team, I think they come away with this. I think they're a very sneaky team with their record. Um, I think they might be doubted going in this game by the squad, but I think ASAP can pull away with this one. Daniel, who you got in this one? I think this is a hard one to call, but
So, I'm a man of the people. Gian Avedijan, he asked me to shout him out in the podcast 2 weeks ago. I wasn't able to get to him, but I'm gonna take Team ASAP with this one. I mean, obviously Gian wasn't there this week, and even though they won, it was by a smaller margin. But I think with Gian there and the way they're playing right now, this is a good team. Even though they are 2-2, I think they faced some tough teams to start out with, but they learned. And they learned how to play together. They learned how to get rebounds. They learned how to get assists. They played so well last game, and I think that I would be so hopeful to see them get a win this week against a squad, a team who may need to take a step back for a minute and try and figure out what's going on because they're a good team too, but at the same time, it feels like there's only 2 guys running the table there, and I think that this is an opportunity for Team ASAP to jump on that.
all right, Noah, Who you rocking with, ASAP or the squad?
Well, I feel like the squad truther on this podcast because the squad is a great team. And I really do think, when they make a playoff push in a couple weeks, you guys are going to be coming back to this podcast. I believe in this team. I think that they're a great team. I think you should rename them to the Titans because all of their guys are huge. They're all great rebounders. Their top three scorers all had 6+ boards. I think the key for this team now is dialing back on those turnovers. Against us over them, they lost that turnover margin 4-13. So 13 turnovers is not going to win you a game against a good team. But I think that against Team ASAP, a team that, has some size, but maybe not as much as you would like to see, I think guys like John Callon, a young, crafty, great rebounder, great finisher, is going to absolutely devastate a team like Team ASAP, who I feel like is still mourning the absence of Noah James. I'm still looking for them to have some type of scoring talent who's going to be your 1A, your main guy that you're going to. I'm still not seeing that from Team ASAP. And I think the squad is just going to overwhelm them on the offensive glass. They're going to get a lot of rebounds, and this game's going to get out of hand too. I'm taking the squad by 10 plus. You heard it here first. The squad is real, and they are ready to make a playoff push.
All right, we got one squad fanboy on the team on the podcast. I don't think squad's a bad team. They kept it close with who's next and us over them, and they beat Run It Up. So they've had a tough schedule, and they haven't they 2-2. But I think this is going to be a much closer game. But I just think ASAP has a lot of experience, and I think it's experience versus non experience with some of those newer guys on the squad. I just think ASAP has a lot of shooters, and yeah, it doesn't seem like the squad has too many shooters. I think that's just going to be the difference. Um, the last matchup, also another good matchup. Run It Up versus us over them. If Run It Up has their full lineup, this is going to be a close game. But if they show up with four guys, I think it's going to be a 10+ win for us over them. They just have too many guys, and when you can kind of bring Derek or Gio off the bench, who we didn't have this week, which we didn't even mention, we didn't have Derek Revelis or Gio Neville, two really good guys and past All-Stars, Defensive Player of the Year, and we didn't even have them this week. And playing them against a team that only has four guys would have been really good. And we were able to force 13 turnovers with two of our best defenders not there. And I think if we have them this week, even if Run It Up has their full team, I think we have enough to beat them. I think down low we have a lot of good guys with Derek and Gio who can get those blocks. And I think Tack and Sean haven't really found their swing yet. Elaine's kind of been picking up the slack for them offensively. I think it's kind of in a weird transition period with Run It Up where they're going to try to get, maybe they think, Elaine's on fire right now, let's get him the ball, and then he has an off night, and then, it's too late into the second quarter where you're already down 8 and you try to push it to another guy. I just think they're in a really weird slump right now, and I'm never going to go against my guys, so I'm obviously sticking with us over them to beat them. But I think Run It Up is honestly in a weird slump right now. They didn't play last week because of a forfeit. They lost the week before that, and they haven't really been able to find their rhythm. And I think it's going to take them a couple more weeks to get back into the swing of things. Noah, I'll go back to you first this time. Run It Up, us over them. Another good matchup, but let me know who you're sticking with.
Yeah, well, fans of the summer league for legacy leagues will know that I was the biggest Run It Up truther last year. I was the only one who picked them to win the championship, which they ended up doing. But I don't know if I've seen enough from them this year to say that they can go toe to toe with us over them, considering how good us over them has been. Um, Although I do think that the competitive nature of us over them, all the trash talk, all the energy, could honestly benefit Run It Up in this game. I think sometimes a problem for Run It Up is they're not playing with enough fight, with enough passion. Um, and so if us over them is pushing them all game and, doing what they like to do, which is chirp, I think it could definitely help Run It Up in terms of playing harder and, playing better basketball. But I just haven't seen enough from running up this season to say that they're going to be able to, guard Isaac Lane, Amandi Weaver, Shaq Murray, or they're going to be able to score enough points when being guarded by Anthony Cabrera, or Derek Revelis if he shows up. And so I'm not ready to take running up until I see something more from them. So I'm taking us over them.
I mean, yeah, definitely. I think Tack isn't the guy you want to trash talk, or Sean, or Elaine. Honestly, either any of those guys you don't really want to trash talk. And I I don't even know how you trash talk Tack. I mean, he's such a nice guy off the court, and he plays really respectful basketball, and I would not trash talk. But then again, we have you know Anthony who's gonna trash talk anybody. So we'll see how it goes. Yeah, I definitely haven't seen too much fight from them the last couple weeks, or the last couple losses they had. It kind of seems they're kind of fatigued and gassed. And if they had a full team, maybe there's more fight and more guys to kind of, hype them up. But it's hard when you only got four guys. So we need to see a full run up to make this game a close one. Daniel, who you think's coming out on top?
I'm just trying to find a coin here so I could just decide who's going to win this. I got to flip it. But I think that I'm always getting deja vu from week two. I mean, they're coming off a big win. I'm gonna bring up the interview again. I know all the guys in that team are gonna be mad about it, but they said we're the best team in the league. We're gonna win. We're gonna go undefeated. And then they got beat by who's next. I know who's next obviously is the best team in the league, but with a full run it up squad, I think that they bring this out. It's a matter of who shows up, and it's a matter of if they all show up. This is a solid team. This is a championship team, and we just can't look past that. I think that us over them again is a very solid team. This will be within a 5 point game, but I think run it up might come out on top here just because of the overall. I'm gonna say roundness and overall like compatibility of the team.
All right, I think who's next is the only team that got all three of us on their side. I think this was a very split week. A lot of interesting matchups, a lot of exciting matchups. I think this is like probably the best it can be. Um, and yeah, we'll see some. Wait, let me actually. I'm gonna cheat a little bit and look into next week. Yeah, some good matchups in the next week too. I think there's good matchups every single week until the playoffs, where obviously it's going to be good matchups till the end. A lot of exciting stuff to come with the 2026 summer season. Shout out Daniel, shout out Noah for joining me this week. Yeah, we'll see you all in the next week's podcast. Peace.